The 14th Five-Year Plan enhances Hong Kong as a regional intellectual property trading hub. Hong Kong has a sound legal system, top professional services, and robust intellectual property protection, bringing business opportunities to all. The Intellectual Property Department offers upgraded training courses to establish the expertise of managers in enterprises and enhance competitiveness while providing a free legal consultation service. For details, visit ip.gov.hk. The 14th Five-Year Plan enhances Hong Kong as a regional intellectual property trading hub. Hong Kong has a sound legal system, top professional services, and robust intellectual property protection, bringing business opportunities to all. The Intellectual Property Department offers upgraded training courses to establish the expertise of managers in enterprises and enhance competitiveness while providing a free legal consultation service. For details, visit ip.gov.hk.
Welcome to the keynote session. The theme for this session is Unleashing Innovation for Sustainability and Growth. A warm reminder to our audience that this session will be conducted in English. You can choose to hear 普通话 by using the pull-down menu next to the video screen. 欢迎来到亚洲知识产权营商论坛。这一节的专题演讲将会以英语进行，但为设有普通话同声传译服务。你可以通过视频框旁边的菜单选择收听现场英语声道或普通话声道。During the panel discussions, if you have any questions for our speakers, you may post the questions in the Q&A box next to the live streaming video frame. The session will be chaired by Mr. Michael Lin, board member, the International Intellectual Property Commercialization Council, and joined by our distinguished speaker, Mr. Gautier Engisch, Vice President and Associate General Counsel, Legal, Innovation, EMEA, and Global Fabric Care, Procter & Gamble. To start off the session, we would like to invite Michael to start with us. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the HKTDC for inviting us to speak. And we're very excited to be hosting this VIP Asia session. I'm here to introduce Gautier. He has been a friend of mine for 25 plus years. He's been working in P&G for 33 years. He's a European patent attorney, a vice president for fabric and home care, as well as EMEA. And he also has pretty much held every position from, starting patent attorney all the way up. So I saw him go from section head to associate director to director and now vice president. So I'm very happy to bring him in and have him talk a little bit about how COVID has really changed the working environments in Europe. So please. Gautier.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for the very kind introduction. Dear colleagues, good morning. I'm very honored to have been asked to do this talk this morning. And the topic that I was asked to address is unleashing innovation for sustainability and growth. At first sight, this sounds like a business topic. You know, how would you leverage product innovation to increase sales and volume in a sustainable manner or with environmental sustainability in mind? But as Michael explained, I'm not a business manager, so that's not quite what I will be talking about. My job actually is I lead Procter & Gamble's European Patent Group in Europe. That is a group of about 35 people. It's not huge, but it's still 35 people. So really, I'm mainly a people manager, and that's what I like to talk about. In parallel, I'm sure that you've noticed that the world has changed a lot in the last 2 years. You might have heard about a nasty virus and a global pandemic that still is ongoing. Be reassured, I'm not going to be talking about COVID. I'm sure we've all had enough of that, for sure.
但是呢，我在这儿呢也会跟大家
has changed the way we work, or more precisely, how we've had to change the way we work in order to deal with this, and how that has given us the opportunity to innovate in a way that we could grow and sustain the organization. So that is really what I'm going to be talking about. It's a bit of an adaptation. Before we dig into the substance, I need to first make a disclaimer that, you know, what I'm about to say is really my own views. They may or may not fully fit with whatever official views P&G has on the topic. So please don't quote me as saying P&G does that. That's really my own views, okay? And also, as Michael said, I don't know if you said it, but I'm based in Belgium, in Western Europe. The situation here, the COVID situation, it really isn't very good these days. After we had quite an improvement over summer, now it's bad again. But I understand that most of you in the audience are in Asia, where things, I believe, might be at a different stage. So what I'm about to say is really the vision of someone who lives in Western Europe, but I believe that the themes that I'll be developing are pretty much relevant to everyone or anyone. So a little less than 2 years ago, before the pandemic, most of us were working in a very similar fashion. We were all, I think, all working mainly in an office space with colleagues around us. There was little or no work from home. There was limited flexibility in the work time arrangements. We had daily commutes. Some of us had very long daily commutes. We had lots of meetings. I don't know about you, but for me, I'd say that some of those meetings are necessary, some perhaps a little less necessary. And then we had lots of travel as well. And then abruptly, very abruptly, literally from one day to the next, all of that changed. We started working from home, no colleagues around whatsoever. We started working from home all the time. There was no more commuting at all. We started also having fewer meetings, and I'm not sure why that is, but I've noticed that it seemed to be a collateral effect of working from home, that people would schedule fewer meetings. I don't know, maybe people are more focused or want to be more focused, and they're less interested in wasting time with meetings. Anyway, fewer meetings, and then of course, no travel at all. I mean, you all know that humans are mostly resistant to change, at least initially, and this is a lot of change in so many areas. Lots of change at the same time. from one day to the next, that can be quite traumatic. But if you really think about it, a lot of that is actually good news. Let's see, you work from home all the time. That means that you are closer to your family if you have one. Of course, maybe sometimes a little too close to the family, but spending more time with your family is a good thing. There's much more flexibility in the work time arrangements. If anything else, that's de facto, because it's very difficult to check on people if that's what you wanted to do. You can take your kids to school and go back to work. No one's going to know because no one's going to see. You can exercise in the middle of the morning if that's what you like to do. Again, no one's going to be able to see that. Commuting, there's no more commuting at all. For me, that means a lot. And I had a 30 minutes commute each way, and that's on a good day. So basically, from one day to the next, I started saving 1 hour per day. That's 5 hours per week. And I can reinvest those 5 hours in whichever way I like. I can do more work if I need to do more work, or I can reinvest those 5 hours in leisure time. If you think of it, over a working year is what, 48 weeks maybe? 5 hours, 48 weeks, that's 240 hours or so. That's 10 days. I am getting 10 days of my life back all of a sudden. Fewer meetings, as I said, I'm convinced that is very helpful in order to be able to focus on things. And finally, no more travel. But again, you don't need to get up at silly hours in the morning to catch an early flight. There's no more countless hours of waiting in the airports, the stress of traveling, the frustration of dealing with delays, not to mention the CO2 saving. So what I'm talking about is that if people are willing to let go of the trauma that was brought about by the change itself, by the magnitude of the change and how suddenly it happened, and of course, if you forget about the underlying cause for all this, which is, of course, a disease, there's actually a lot of good into this. Now, at this point, I hasten to say that I am in no way saying that COVID is a good thing for the world. I'm very aware that lots of people have died, and lots of people, including, I'm sure, some of you in the audience, have suffered in so many different ways. But what I'm saying simply is that, we had no choice in this. We were confronted with that change. But some of the consequences are actually very positive. And if we're willing to realize that, to accept it, to acknowledge it, and even rejoice, then right away we are in a much better place. It's true for each and every one of us. And because you all happen to either work with people, for someone, or have someone working for you, if you talk about your positive mindset, that may become more true for the people that are around you. That, in my opinion, is innovation. It's innovation in the way we perceive the context, in the way we think about it all, in the mindset. Of course, there's undeniably downside in this whole thing, and I'm sure, the downside in the whole COVID pandemic has to be the isolation, the alienation, as I think that's the right word in English, and the change in so many of our benchmarks. So, for instance, you probably used to go to lunch with colleagues or have coffee breaks with them, and hopefully you enjoyed that. That is now gone. You also used to have that commute, which was a very convenient way to get ready to work, to switch from leisure to work, and again, to wind down on the way back from work. That is gone too. And this last point, this lack of a clear separation between leisure and work time, that is something that people seem to struggle with a lot. I've read about it in many articles, and in our own internal survey in the company, we do a personal survey every year. That is something that was expressed by a lot of people very loud and clear. But there again, that is an area where we can innovate in the way we choose to behave. We can all decide to have our own little routine in the mornings and in the evenings to switch from leisure to work and back again. It can be anything. It can be reading the papers. It can be walking the dog if you have one. It can be exercising. It can be whatever. It takes a little discipline, but it's definitely doable. And again, you can role model, especially if you have people reporting to you. You can role model by talking about this, by talking about your own personal tricks, your personal experience, and you can definitely role model also by not sending emails at crazy times of the night or during weekends. A lot of people do that now, send emails all the time. If you don't do that and you role model, you take a lot of pressure off of people who are reading your emails and might feel compelled to answer. That's innovation in the way we behave. At this point, we also need to talk a bit about group culture or company culture. Group or company culture is something that we're all familiar with. We all experience it every day. We experience it in our families. We experience it with our groups of friends, and we experience it with our colleagues at work. I guess you could define company culture as a set of values, a set of habits, or a set of interests which link people together. It's the cement or the glue, if you want to call it that. And I'm sure you all agree that it's pretty fundamental to have a company culture, to have a healthy, a steady, and a happy group of people. And it's not something that you talk or think about much. I mean, I certainly can't remember the last time I talked or thought about group culture at work with people. It's just something that it exists, and it seems to perpetuate itself by the sheer fact of spending time with people, with other members of the group. But here's the trouble, though. If indeed group culture is so important, and if indeed it perpetuates itself by spending time with people, when in times like these, when you are isolated and you're not spending time with people, you're going to have a problem sooner or later. I say sooner or later because, of course, if you had a very strong group culture to begin with, then you can probably live off of it for longer without seeing people than if you had a weak culture to begin with. At P&G, we pride ourselves of having a very strong company culture. I certainly completely agree with that. And I can positively affirm that it has served us very well indeed in this time of pandemic. But, we need to be careful and mindful, and we need to work on it, because otherwise there will come a time, for sure, where the cement will start to crumble and the glue will melt. Now, I'm not going to talk much about how you work on group culture. I mean, it's fairly straightforward. Basically, you need to have regular meetings, group meetings, or one-to-one. And they don't necessarily have to be only about work. Perhaps it's even better if they're not all about work. I'll give you an example. I mean, Christmas is coming up soon for us who celebrate Christmas. It's 5 weeks away now. Last year we had a great virtual Christmas party. So we were all at home. We were on lockdown already. And we were all home on Zoom or Teams, I can't remember. And we were sharing stuff. So for instance, one of us played a piano for the group, Another one read a very nice story. There's tons of things you can do. I mean, you can do cooking classes together. You can be doing cocktails, alcoholic or not, depending on your company policies, I suppose. You can do tons of things, or even after Christmas for New Year, we had a very nice virtual New Year party because we wanted to reconnect after the vacation, and I wanted to make sure that we would, kick off the year with a good momentum. So we had a virtual party. Basically, it was playing an online game together, and it was really great fun. And it didn't take long; it was just an hour or so. There are companies now who specialize in that offer because they realize there's a business. So I mean, it's pretty simple to do. Or even if you have just regular one-to-ones with people, if you just take the time to ask people how they're doing, just care about people. That is innovation in the way we care for others. At this point, we need to talk a bit about technology, equipment, and setup. That's a lot less psychological, probably a lot less interesting, but it's definitely just as important. I mean, to put it bluntly, work from home does not work if you don't have the right infrastructure. It goes without saying you need to have a good internet, obviously. But you also need a good chair. If you're going to be sitting at your computer at home for hours and you have a chair that's uncomfortable, that's no good. So you need all of this, and for those of us who do patent drafting and prosecution, you're going to need a pretty big screen that you probably don't have at home to begin with, or maybe 2 screens. Anyway, what I'm saying is that employers have to be willing to invest, make the financial investment so that their employees are going to be comfortable working from home. It also helps if you are fully digital. In my group, we were lucky because I think it was 2 years before the pandemic, we had chosen to digitize all of our working files, no more paper files at all. I can access any of our cases from anywhere in the world from my computer, and those files contain everything I need. There's the specification, the claims, obviously, the prior art, the office actions, all the internal memos, everything, all of it. So basically, when lockdown happened, and literally here it was from one day to the next, well, we just went home and we carried on with the work that we were doing. That aspect of the lockdown was hardly a disruption for us. Now, digitization may seem simple. I mean, conceptually, it's a very simple thing. But it's quite a bit of work to make it happen. It's also a bit of a financial investment because you're probably going to be, outsourcing that. But if you ask me, if you haven't done it yet, I really recommend that you do, because who knows when the pandemic is going to go away, if it ever will. And even if it does go away, as we all hope, you'll be much better off without all those paper files that you need to store somewhere, you need to manage them. It's a mess, basically. So yeah, digitization. What about inspiration? Obviously we're not alone in this endeavor. Others are confronted with the same challenge, and a lot of the solutions are generally applicable. So let me give you an example. Being in Europe, we work a lot with the European Patent Office, the EPO as we call it, and I was very inspired by the EPO. I think that the EPO did a brilliant job at dealing with COVID. What they did is the following things. First of all, they generalized working from home. They didn't have working from home before that, I don't think. They generalized it. They've increased the flexibility in the work schedule of their examiners. They even gave them a very generous allowance of days where they can work from anywhere they like. So it's not even work from home anymore, it's work from wherever they like. Another thing they did, which I think was a beautiful step, is they institutionalized virtual hearings. Now, you may or may not know that when you work with the EPO, if you do EPO oppositions, any opposition ends up with a hearing and then a decision is made. If there's no hearing, I mean, parties can ask for hearings and they do ask for hearings, and then the EPO has to organize one. So if they hadn't kept the ability to have hearings, they wouldn't have been able to process the files. There'd be a huge backlog. So they've done that, institutionalized virtual hearings. And initially there was a lot of reluctance from the profession. You know, people like to go to hearings. It's important, you know, you dress up, you put a tie, you go argue your case. Profession was, you know, pretty much against it. And they were very worried about, you know, how it would work out in practice, the right to be heard, which is a fundamental right in the EPO. Well, the EPO held tight and said, no, we're going to have virtual hearings because we want to keep moving things on. And I'll tell you, I mean, in P&G, we've had, I don't know, dozens of virtual hearings with the EPO, and we have never encountered a single technical issue with any of them. And we have never had a case where we thought the result would have been a different one or a better one if it had been done live rather than virtual. And as I say this, I include cases where we actually lost. Okay, so it's a beautiful thing, really, virtual hearings. By the way, another good thing about virtual hearings for you guys in Asia, I don't know, some of you probably have traveled to the EPO to attend the hearings, but if you wanted to attend a hearing, you had to travel all the way to Europe, you know, for a couple of hours of hearing. Well, nowadays, with these virtual hearings, all you have to do is join by Zoom. Now, you may have to stay late because it's during the day, but anyone can join. I mean, they're public hearings anyway, and I recommend you do that because it's usually pretty interesting. So going back to my point, what I was saying about the EPO is that this was a pretty bold move, and the EPO did it because they felt it was right and it was working. Well, you know, we can all be bold and we can all be inspired by others and how they deal with this. You know, this context, I believe, is a unique opportunity to make things change, and we really should make the most of it. And for instance, again, I mean, you know, going back to my personal situation, in P&G in Belgium, where I live, working from home has been allowed for a few years now, and we've been using it, but not working away from home. That was a big no-no. Well, now that can change, and I think we have something, I think it's 20 days per year where we can work from anywhere we like. And for me, for instance, that's very useful. I have an old father. He's on his own. He lives, you know, more than 1,000 kilometers away from me. I can't go see him for 2 days. And, you know, I might not want to take a full week to go see him. Well, I can do that now, work from over there during the day and look after him in the evenings and the mornings. That's fine. So it's very precious. It's invaluable. It's worth more to me than a raise, frankly. And that seems to have happened, you know, in the click of the fingers, whereas it had been a big no-no for years. So anyway, to close the loop on the EPO, we'll see what happens after the pandemic is over. Will the EPO go back to normal hearings? Will they stick to virtual hearings 100%? Will it be something in between? I think it'll probably be something in between, but I'm pretty sure that they'll want to privilege virtual hearings because they're much handier, they're much easier. By the way, the boards of appeal in the EPO is a different thing, so I'm not going to be talking about that. That brings me to my next point, the future. one day, hopefully soon, the pandemic will be under control and we will resume a normal life, a more normal life. And when that happens, it's going to be interesting to see what becomes of all this innovation that we've brought about in how we work. You know, will we want people to come to the office 100%? Will we want them to stay home 100%? I guess it'll be a mix between those two extremes. But what's the right answer for you, for your organizations? In Belgium, we've had an interesting taste of things to come. So, you know, for a while we were completely at home in the beginning of the pandemic, and then things improved, and we tried to bring people back to work. You know, it was initially 1 day a week, then it was 2 days a week, and right there, you know, you can sense some reluctance. People really weren't willing to come back to work that much. Simply because they've learned to like working from home and all the flexibility and all the good things that it brings. That's understandable. We talked a bit about company culture before that, and I think that people underestimate a lot the importance of company culture and the importance of company culture to their well-being in the work office. So I think we'll have to find the sweet spot of spending enough time together, and that'll be for us, for each manager to find what's the right answer. Of course, within the limits of what our employees are willing to give us. And personally, I think that, you know, 2 days a week is probably a good thing. Yeah, I mean, basically what I'm saying is that when this is over, it would really be a shame if we forget everything that we learned about how we do our work in the pandemic, and if we go back to what we were doing 2 years ago. And if we do things right, I am convinced that we will end up with happier people, and happier people, you know, they're more productive, they're more creative, and they tend to stay for longer. So that is, I believe, growth and sustainability. So that's what I had to say. I'm going to stop here. I hope that this has been useful to you. As I said, I think there's really a lot to be learned from others. So if you feel like, you know, sharing information, giving me feedback or asking questions, you know, I'd be grateful. I would really be grateful if you would email those to me. I thank you for listening, and I'll be happy to take any questions. I think, Michael, you may have a few questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Gautier. That was really excellent. Very interesting advice and also insights from your past 2 years. I guess the question is, do you think that these insights that you have are limited simply to the European patent attorneys that work with you, or is it broader than that?
Definitely not. I mean, I think that what I talked about is really applicable to any organization, because it's always about working with people. I mean, I work a lot with US attorneys, and it's the same for them. It's worked with them as well. And the other day I was having a conversation with a friend of mine at P&G, who is the VP in charge of open innovation for fabric and home care. So open innovation is the way we call the innovation that we do with the outside world, with other companies, I mean, typically with suppliers. And open innovation, of course, is a collaboration effort. It's a team sport. And he basically saw exactly the same things that I saw in my group. And then basically where we have strong relationships with outside suppliers and existing programs when pandemic kicked in, those programs continued to move on pretty much at the same pace. If you wanted to start a new program with with a supplier. That was a bit more difficult, but still fine. What was really difficult is to create new relationships with new suppliers, people that we've never worked before. That has proven to be extremely difficult, even from the legal point of view, negotiating the terms of the relationship. And again, this goes to, I think it goes to the company culture. You're talking about starting a relationship or a program with people that you do not know, so you have no company culture. How do you create it? Is very difficult. So the answer, Michael, is no. I think it's probably applicable to any group of people.
Okay, thank you. So what other innovations and big real game changers do you see coming down the pike for your group?
Well, apart from virtual hearings in the EPO, which, as I said, is a very useful tool for us, and I think we're likely to see more of those, there is something really big coming over in Europe. I'm sure you've heard about it, which is the Unitary Patent and the Unified Patents Court. The Unitary Patent is a patent which is going to be valid for all the countries European Economic Union. It's different from the EPO patent, although the EPO will be granting those patents. And then the other thing is the Unified Patents Court, which is a court system for dealing with IP for a number of those countries in the European Union. Not all of them, but I think it's 16 or so. So what that means basically is that when this is all up and running, and it's going to be a few years because there's going to be a ramp-up period, but when this is all up and running, you will be able to litigate one patent, one set of proceedings, and that will cover a good part of the economic union. I think that's going to be pretty powerful. It's going to be much cheaper than it used to be. Now, unfortunately, of course, when the UK left the union, Brexit, they also went out of that whole system. So they'll still have to litigate in the UK separately. But yeah, that's going to be, I think, pretty useful innovation of how patents are litigated in Europe.
Excellent. I know in Asia, a lot of the concern about working from home was focused on productivity. And people were very concerned that, if we let people work from home, we don't know if they're actually going to do any work. Are they going to get everything done that they're supposed to get done? Those types of things. What have you seen?
Yeah, that's a great question, Michael, because that concern, I think, is inherent in humans. It's not just in Asia. I know that there are some managers in P&G who still feel like this. I can say categorically, I've seen no difference at all. No, actually, maybe even better in some areas. Better productivity. There are things that you can measure, and as a manager, I think I should measure them. So I measure things like the number of patent applications that people write, number of office actions that they respond to, the number of freedom to market opinions that they issue. Those are things that you can measure very simply, and I have seen no difference. And in the case of patent applications, at least there was a quarter where my people were actually filing more, which, by the way, is also very interesting because I think if productivity increased too much, you should be just as worried because you don't want people to burn out and you want them to be performing in the long run. So no, literally, it's worked just fine.
Okay, thank you, Gautier. I'm just wondering, in order to, as you're in Europe and we're here in Asia, I'm wondering, what do you think that the pandemic, or as you mentioned, all these innovations that we're doing for the pandemic, what do you think they're going to mean for cross-border, even continent collaborations?
I think, as I said, on the whole, I think it's a good thing because people have become much more comfortable doing work over video links and stuff. And it's much easier for me, for instance, to be talking to you, Michael, on a weekly basis if we wanted to, rather than traveling back and forth. But I still think that, if and when we're able to travel again, we will need to be doing some of that as well, because there's no replacement for a live interaction with people. Speaking to someone over a computer is one thing, seeing them in real life is another, the chemistry, etc. So I think the pandemic has really helped us right-size the amount of meetings and traveling and that. But yeah, it's a question of balance, really. You need to hit the balance right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you again for everyone for giving me the opportunity to talk. I wish you a very fruitful conference.
Thank you very much, Gautier, for the wonderful session, and really appreciate it. It's been wonderful listening to you, and now it's time for us to pass it back to the host. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael and Gautier, for the time with us. Coming up next, we're going to have the plenary session where we have invited industry veterans from Nokia Technologies, Ricoh, Meidi, and Microsoft to discuss powering new paradigms for sustainability and growth, which will be held at 11:15. Please stay with us. We're invited to complete a short survey to redeem a coffee voucher or special offer to BIP 2022. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description below. Moreover, you're encouraged to check out our exhibitors and communicate with our conference participants at our platform. In case you have missed any sessions, playbacks will also be available at the virtual platform until the end of December. Thank you very much for your participation, and we'll see you later.